I'll just start out with the injuries. Really, as far as the injuries, the only one, David Long got his groin. He'll probably be out for this week. We'll see where that's at, but I would imagine that he will most likely be out for this game. Ben Skowronek banged up his shoulder, but he should be day to day. Feel good about the availability. And then John Wolford with his neck, got some soreness. He'll be day to day as well. And that's kind of where we're at injury wise.
Start you, Sarah.
Sean, with Matthew, do you expect him to be ready for OTAs? Like, is this a long-term injury?
No, I would expect him to be ready to go and have a good, healthy offseason, Sarah.
What have the conversations been with him? One about being done likely for the season and just kind of going forward in his health.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is this guy wants to compete. He wants to be out there. Putting him on IR was a result of the spinal cord contusion, and to my understanding, that's kind of where we've left those conversations, just to give him the clarity of that was what we felt like was best. That was what the doctors felt like was best, and whenever that ends up being where he is fully medically cleared, that there's a loose timetable on that, but it's more about having a healthy off season. But we have constant dialogue. I think, in these types of situations, Sarah, I think the most appropriate perspective, at least for me, is just to take it a day at a time and try to be the best that I can be for these players, for these coaches in the midst of, a real challenging season that we're battling through right now.
And then with Cam, have you seen growth from him, maybe personally, just from where we were in the middle of the season when he was away from the team to then what he did last night?
I was proud of Cam. I've been impressed with the way that he's handled it. I thought he ran hard. I thought he had a great play energy about himself, the way that he was able to level off both of his touchdown runs, even on the first drive. I thought he was instrumental in getting us going. So I am proud of him. I think he'd be better equipped to answer that, but just the way that what he's done is exactly what we've asked. And for that, I'm grateful. And I thought he did a really nice job of giving us a chance to win a game yesterday.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Gilbert.
Hey, Sean, with being a short week and John being day to day, are you going to prepare, like with Perkins being the starter?
I think you have to have the mindset for both guys. You're with the short week, you're naturally trimmed. You're limited with your practice opportunities. So, really, we'll get into this film. We'll figure out what we think is going to be the best way to try to put together a game plan in all three phases. But to say that you wouldn't need to have both those guys ready to go, that's definitely something that we have to keep in mind.
Okay. And Sean, yesterday you mentioned you're seeing improvements on the field lately. Can you kind of highlight a few of those improvements that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably saw Gilberto. I think, we were able to run the football. I thought, Tutu Atwell and Brandon Powell were really big bright spots for us. I thought the way that Cam ran and leveled things off, I thought the way that we were able to kind of be in sync in some of the things that we were looking to in terms of our intent, on the offensive line. I thought Michael Hoyt was excellent on the defensive side of the ball. I thought for the most part, some of those younger players on the defensive line, did some really good things. I thought Bobby Wagner shined bright as hell, really brought everybody with them. And, those are some things that I saw in terms of, the improvement.
And Sean, with Michael Hoyt, at what point did you notice this guy could be a pretty good outside linebacker or edge rusher?
Probably 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, we would have done this a lot sooner.
Sounds good, Sean. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jordan.
Hey, Sean. Just to kind of look at a little bit of a bigger picture. You talk every year about losing coaches and you're excited for opportunities and things like that. But with so much changeover, do you feel like that had become a factor at all in just some of the ways that you guys are struggling? And are you getting conclusively, do you feel you're getting, what you need from all your assistants, and how is that dynamic working where you're trying to develop coaches while also kind of hold the team together in this regard through this chaos?
Yeah, that's a question that would take a long time to go through, but everything matters, I think, Jordan. The answer is yes, these guys are doing a very good job. There's been a lot of reasons that I can point to that are definitely being noted. From my perspective, from what we're looking for everybody's roles and responsibilities, from our coaches to players to, the leadership, that I want to provide the clarity for what those things are that I have definitely not done a good enough job on. in a lot of instances. We've had a lot of things that are out of our control that I think have been, critical factors as well. But I think the main thing I would say, Jordan, that I've realized, if you talk about just relative to that question in general, the turnaround and how much shorter that was relative to when our season finished up, in addition to having as much turnover on the staff, and even with some of the different guys that are playing, you aren't able to develop the foundational elements of how you want to operate on both sides, nor provide probably the clarity of exactly what is needed for people that maybe haven't been here. And that's no one's responsibility but my own. It's never too late to be able to fix some of those things, but I do think that when you're not getting those results, everything is heightened and exclamated. And the goal is for when we do get back to operating the way that we're accustomed to and the way we expect to and anticipate to, making sure that we don't let some of those little things that maybe I've let slip over the previous couple of years, go unnoticed, even when, we try to get back to operating the way that we are. But ultimately, to answer your original question, that is a factor. I think the turnaround, the timing of it, but ultimately it falls on my leadership. And for that, I've learned, and I will continue to learn from the mistakes and make sure we don't repeat them.
And then just quick football question. I had asked you about the breakdown, the final Seattle drive. Obviously, Geno made a great play to DK Metcalf at the end. But in terms of the overall plan, were you guys trying to hold them from getting a field goal, and kind of what was the disconnect in once they crossed the, into field goal range? It just sort of seemed maybe like a lack of cohesion in terms of, are you going to pin them behind field goal range, or
there wasn't lack of cohesion at all. It was a lack of execution in some instances. And, the goal was, when they got into where it would potentially be field goal range, obviously you want to try to be able to win the football game. And then when you look at how much time's left and different things like that, felt like, all right, if they did get into field goal range, let's prevent them from scoring a touchdown, so that you go into overtime. With the amount of time that was left and the way that you have to operate, to say you want to get into a big known passing situation, I didn't think that was in our best interest and our best way to try to be able to win the football game. If you look at when we get the ball back offensively. And so that's why, just whether you're alluding to the utilization of timeouts, things of that nature, the goal is to not let them score a touchdown. Obviously, once they got close to that field goal range, the 3rd and 10, we can be a lot tighter, and not allow them to, complete something underneath and be able to get vertical. And for that, got to have better situational understanding and awareness. And that starts with us communicating it to our guys. And then once they got into that area, what you didn't want to do is allow them to be able to huddle up, get a clean operation. They had a clock stoppage from the previous one right before the touchdown. And, they ended up running kind of a pin boot where, they did a good job with the tight end, stymie and flow. He was able to step up with that little cavity that was created. And DK's a big guy coming across the middle, and he threw it in between, a lot of guys with a perfect, accurate throw to be able to win. And you give them credit, for making that play.
Thanks for the clarity on that, Sean.
You're welcome.
Gary?
How much, if at all, do you think Matthews not throwing last off season impacted you guys going into this season?
I definitely think it had an impact, Gary. I mean, because you talk about rapport, establishing a rapport, a rhythm, a comfort, not only with, just he and you, everybody wants to talk about he and Cooper, but even just some of the newer pieces. So, otherwise I'd say, why the hell do we practice? So, I think it definitely had an impact without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about, possibly shutting him down, and the goal really being more about having a healthy off season, what do you want to see from him during the off season going into kind of, your spring workout, so that you can maybe avoid that kind of situation again?
Honestly, I would tell you this. I think that's a question to be answered at a later time. I'm trying to do the best I can in this situation right now, Gary, and those will be things that definitely need to be addressed and thought through. But I want to try to do everything in my power for these players and coaches to just be here right now and not look too far ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll wrap up with Greg, then Stu.
Hey, Sean, this is the only time we're going to talk to you this week. Can you tell us your impressions of the Raiders and Josh McDaniels, and just what you're facing on Thursday?
Yeah, I think this is a team that their record doesn't at all reflect what a good football team they are. They've obviously won a handful in a row. I think they're excellent. I think they're well coached in all three phases. I think they've got key critical players at the right spots to really be able to influence and affect the game in all three phases. We'll get into it. I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday as well, and have a little bit better insight when I've kind of been able to digest a little bit more film. But I think a lot has been made over, obviously I think Derek Carr is an excellent player. Josh Jacobs has been outstanding and Devontae's as good as it gets. And so, the offense has really been firing, through those three over the last handful of weeks. They've gotten a lot of different guys involved. I've seen, Matt Collins has made a bunch of different plays, and then defensively, obviously they've got two legitimate guys that are coming off the edge. But once I really dive into this film, I'll be able to, have a better feel. But just watching it from afar and then my respect for Josh and, what he brings to the table as a coach and Patrick Graham and those guys is extremely high, and know what great coaches they are.
Then Tutu has got his first significant action in the NFL over the last 2 weeks. And you said he's responded really well and given you some stuff. Why didn't this happen earlier in his career, do you think?
I think last year, he had the injury. And I think really just sometimes opportunities are presented and probably should have had more opportunities, this season. And so really last year was more of a result of the injury and the depth that we ended up having at that position with guys that we already knew were ready to roll. This year probably should have gotten more opportunities earlier on in the season. And that's, something that I won't run away from, because all this guy's done is answer the bell when he's had his chances.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Stu's the last one.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Sean, thanks. Just a quick one for you. You mentioned last night seeing some, obvious signs of growth from the team. What were the most prominent examples in your eyes that you guys can build off of the rest of the season?
Yeah, the thing is, the things that I was kind of talking about where, you just look at, there was better continuity. I thought our operation overall was better offensively. We were able to get in and out. You look at the 10-play opening scoring drive. I thought that was, a couple third down conversions, some good hard runs, some different things that I thought, was excellent. That takes all 11 to be able to execute. I talked about just some of the improvement. You're getting a lot of guys. I thought, even just being able to get Jacoby Durant in there yesterday, I thought he had, some real bright spots. Russ Yeast as well. So you're seeing some younger guys, whether it was the Tutus that we talked about. Thought Cam was a bright spot, even though he's not necessarily a younger guy, but those guys on defense and Michael Hoyt, and then Bobby Wagner, I thought shined as bright as anybody, but that's been consistent. That's not necessarily a new development for us.